Margaret's backyard had once been a peaceful haven, a sunlit retreat where every morning, neighbors exchanged warm smiles and a shared love of community blossomed over ripening tomatoes and friendly waves. But one summer, that sanctuary turned into an arena for boundary breakers, and Margaret's pool, once a symbol of refreshment and shared joy, was hijacked by strangers acting as if it were their own. It began subtly. One evening after a long, wearisome day, Margaret stepped onto her patio only to find mysterious, damp footprints meandering across the cool stone. At first, she assumed it was the work of a wandering raccoon. Yet, by the next morning, a crumpled soda can bobbed among the ripples of her deep end, and towels, not her own, draped languidly over her pristine lounge chairs as though the space were a rented resort. She resisted the urge to jump to conclusions. Perhaps it was a harmless mistake, a misdirected group of playful kids mistaking her private pool for a community amenity. But as twilight painted the sky in hues of pink and gold one fateful evening, Margaret witnessed a scene that shattered her quiet tolerance. 3 teenagers, giggling like conspirators, waded into her sparkling pool, utterly unaware that every splash was a trespass. Without a shout or a tantrum, Margaret silently opened her sliding door and stepped out. Their laughter froze mid-giggle as they caught sight of her, their faces draining of color. We thought nobody was home," one stammered, scrambling for escape. With arms folded in quiet disappointment, Margaret remarked, "That's exactly the problem." They fled, leaving behind a scattering of dripping towels and an open bag of chips, its salty contents spilling like a broken promise across her deck. For 20 long minutes, she scooped soggy crumbs from the pool, muttering under her breath, convinced that this minor intrusion would finally teach them respect. Alas, the following week heralded a far graver invasion. It wasn't merely mischievous teens anymore, the hijackers had evolved into entire families. By the time Margaret emerged from her door one afternoon, she was greeted by the surreal sight of inflatable rafts bobbing idly in her pool, snack wrappers littering her patio table, and stray flip-flops strewn along the edge as if someone had transformed her backyard into a public park. Determined to salvage civility, Margaret tried diplomacy. She affixed a hand-lettered note to her gate in bold, urgent script, "Private property, please do not enter." She even approached a few parents on the street, gently clarifying her discomfort with unexpected guests. One languid afternoon, her patience was tested further. She spied a woman, reclined in one of Margaret's favorite patio chairs, sunglasses shielding her eyes as she scrolled through her phone, while her children splashed and shrieked in the pool. Stepping forward with calm authority, Margaret said, "Excuse me." The woman barely glanced up. "Oh, I know, the kids just wanted a way to cool off. We'll be out soon." Margaret's jaw tightened. "That's not the point, you didn't even ask." At length, the woman removed her sunglasses and regarded Margaret with an expression that suggested the very idea of ownership was absurd. "It's just a pool," she shrugged dismissively. "You're not even using it." Margaret felt her heart clench with indignation. The sheer audacity of it all, the presumption that her private space was communal simply because she wasn't there every day, cut deep. Later that day, as the heat pressed down like an oppressive weight, Margaret's eyes caught movement near the fence. A young boy, no more than 10, scaled over with the practiced ease of a seasoned trespasser. With a soft thud he landed, scanned his surroundings, and whistled, a signal that summoned 2 more kids to follow suit. Clutching the armrest of her chair, Margaret cleared her throat in a commanding tone. "You might as well finish what you're doing," she stated sharply. The children froze. The smallest, a bright-eyed 7-year-old, even managed a cheeky smile as if to say, "Our mom said it's fine." The eldest, clearly the ringleader, shifted uncomfortably. "We'll just be a minute, no?" he mumbled as he slowly rose. But this time, they obeyed, scrambling back over the fence into a neighbor's yard. In that moment, Margaret realized that her gentle reminders would no longer suffice, and that the ensuing days would only bring further affronts. Margaret's irritation mounted as the season progressed. One blistering afternoon, after a morning of errands and grocery runs, she returned to a scene of brazen chaos. Music blared from unseen speakers, the sound of laughter and splashing children filled the air. Peeking through the gaps in her fence, she beheld a throng of people, families with coolers set up along her patio, grills sending up smoky plumes, and pool floats dotting the water like stray islands. At the center of it all, the same woman from before lounged imperiously in a chair, as though she had paid the mortgage on the space. Margaret sat in her car, hands gripping the steering wheel until her knuckles whitened. The sight of her home, her carefully curated retreat, transformed into a raucous party zone, ignited a spark of resolve. With a determined stride, she stepped out, pushed open her back door, and, though no one acknowledged her entrance, she marched directly onto her patio. "Excuse me," she called again, her voice rising with each step. A few heads turned in reluctant surprise as the music continued, but the disruption was enough. A woman in a nearby chair set down her drink with an irritated sigh. "Oh, hey, Margaret," she greeted, her tone as casual as if nothing were amiss. That was all Margaret needed. Her gaze swept over the oblivious partygoers, strangers treating her cherished domain as a free-for-all, and something inside her snapped. "You all need to get out," she commanded, her voice resonant with finality. Slowly, the tide began to recede. Children clambered out of the pool, dragging their soaked towels behind them. Adults muttered and gathered their belongings, packing up coolers and tossing discarded plastic cups into trash bags. Yet, as the last guest vanished and the gate clanged shut behind them, Margaret knew this was merely the prelude to a larger battle. For while the intruders had finally retreated, their blatant disrespect was far from over, and Margaret's heart was steeling itself for the coming storm. That night, sleep eluded her. In the still darkness of her room, she replayed the day's events over and over, each instance of disregard fueling a growing resolve. For months, she had extended grace and patience, offering polite warnings and even involving local authorities, only to be met with indifference and brazen entitlement. At 72, she was no security guard, yet she could no longer permit her home to be invaded by those who believed that her kindness was an open invitation to overstep boundaries. It wasn't just about a pool anymore, it was about reclaiming her sanctuary. By morning, a decision had crystallized in her mind. The pool, a shimmering emblem of summer indulgence, had become a magnet for uninvited guests. And as long as it remained, the cycle of disrespect would persist. With quiet determination, Margaret picked up the phone. On the other end, a puzzled voice inquired, "You want to get rid of it entirely?" "That's right," she replied, pausing for a moment. "You see, it's not just about a broken lock or a vandalized sign. It's about a space that's been desecrated, and I'm done letting it happen." A brief silence, then a chuckle. "Fair enough. We can start tomorrow." For Margaret, that was the spark of liberation she needed. The day unfolded with a new purpose. While many still clung to the remnants of summer frivolity, Margaret began preparations for a drastic change. By noon, whispers fluttered among the neighbors, curiosity and disbelief mingling as they noticed her quietly conferring with a contractor. Soon, a flatbed truck rolled up just past 8 in the morning, laden with demolition equipment. Within half an hour, a second truck arrived, bringing a crew of workers clad in reflective vests and hard hats. They moved with swift, deliberate precision, unloading tools, marking the perimeter of the pool with bright orange tape, and preparing the site as if heralding a construction revolution. Margaret observed from her porch, arms crossed and eyes unblinking, as more neighbors emerged. Initially, only a few gathered, peeking out from behind drawn curtains or lingering in driveways, but soon a sizable audience had formed. Among them, the once dismissive woman from next door reappeared, her sandals slapping the pavement in a hurry. "What the hell is this?" she demanded, her voice pitched in incredulity. "Construction? You're really tearing out the pool?" Margaret sipped her coffee slowly and replied, "I thought you said it was just a pool." The woman's jaw tightened, her tone laced with disbelief. "You're overreacting." A soft smile tugged at the corners of Margaret's lips, perhaps, but she would no longer tolerate the violation of her property, regardless of popular opinion. The clamor of heavy machinery soon replaced the ambient chatter. A jackhammer roared to life, its relentless rhythm shattering the serene silence and sending shards of broken tile cascading like jagged confetti. The pristine blue water drained away, leaving an unsightly crater in its wake, while workers methodically shoveled and hauled away the debris. Neighbors began calling the homeowners association, voicing protests that fell on deaf ears. After all, the rules allowed her to modify her own property as she saw fit. One neighbor even remarked, "But that pool was a beloved community feature." Margaret raised a knowing eyebrow. "Beloved by whom? I don't recall signing up for a community pool." And just like that, any argument lost its power, what was done, and the tide of entitlement had been turned. By sunset, the last truck rumbled away, leaving behind a smooth, flat slab of freshly poured concrete where once a sparkling pool had been. No more water, no more lounge chairs or spontaneous pool parties, and, most importantly, no more uninvited guests. Yet, as twilight deepened, Margaret's inner resolve only grew stronger. For her, this was not merely an act of destruction, but a reclamation of dignity, a decisive refusal to let others treat her space as communal playground. The following morning, Margaret stepped out onto her now quiet patio with a steaming cup of coffee. The silence was profound, no splashes, no blaring music, just the gentle hum of a peaceful neighborhood. She ran her hand over the smooth concrete, still warm from the previous day's work, and felt a profound sense of liberation. To others, the absence of the pool might have seemed like a loss, but to Margaret, it represented freedom, a reclamation of what was rightfully hers. It wasn't long before word of the transformation spread. A few days later, while delicately planting roses along the edge of her new patio, Margaret sensed a familiar presence approaching. Without even looking up, she recognized the voice of the neighbor from next door. Clearing her throat, the neighbor inquired hesitantly, "So, what are you going to do with it?" Margaret brushed a stray bit of soil from her hand and responded coolly, "Haven't decided yet, maybe a garden, perhaps a cozy fire pit. Honestly, I can shape it however I like." The neighbor shifted uncomfortably. "But you know the kids are really disappointed." Margaret's eyes narrowed. "And where were the kids when my warnings went ignored? When my locks were shattered and my space was treated like an open invitation?" The neighbor's retort faltered, and with a dismissive shake of her head, she turned away, leaving Margaret to tend her roses in quiet satisfaction. In the days that followed, murmurs of discontent echoed through the neighborhood. Some residents grumbled behind closed curtains or offered pointed looks, as if trying to shame Margaret for reclaiming her own home. Yet, no one had the courage to confront her face to face. They all understood deep down that they had pushed past a line that Margaret had drawn with quiet determination and, ultimately, a sledgehammer. Margaret's experience had taught her an unyielding lesson, that kindness, when stretched too thin, can invite exploitation. She had tried polite notes, gentle conversations, even the involvement of local authorities, but nothing deterred those who felt entitled to invade her space. So, with the resolute clarity of someone reclaiming a hard-won victory, she chose to make an irrevocable change. She wasn't angry anymore, she was empowered. Have you ever found yourself at the mercy of entitled neighbors? How did you reclaim your space? Share your story in the comments below. And if you found Margaret's journey as eye-opening as we did, don't forget to like and subscribe for more real-life tales of standing up for what's yours.